A couple weeks ago, I was sitting back relaxing in my decaying office chair watching VTuber ASMR to help with my insomnia. And while browsing the Wizard101 subreddit, I saw a post called "The Top 10 Rarest Treasure Cards," which I was curious about because being a long-time player, I should know everything by now. But deep down within the list, at the very last point, was what I found most puzzling. A burnt-faced man with hemorrhoids. I was so interested by its beautiful face that I read onward, and apparently there were cards that were created by players as a result of an exploit. Reading more into it, it stated that these cards were extremely rare and only a few existed. Now before you think this is Yu-Gi-Moto collecting the 3 Egyptian god cards, this is not that rare. My first stop was Google, because that's usually what people do when they want to know about something. I searched up any words I could think of that connected to these cards, such as the treasure card glitch in Wizard101, or the specific cards mentioned in the Reddit post, such as Yukai, Infected Villager, and Lamia. By this point, it was time to stop with the dry voice and be serious for once. What's strange was that there was little to no information about this exploit on the Wizard101 wiki. Looking up some of these treasure cards mentioned on the subreddit page did not yield any results except for Yukai. So I decided to try the Wizard101 central forums, and there were 1 or 2 threads mentioned about these cards. Unfortunately, clicking these links would redirect you to the Wizard101 trading subforum. I also tried to use the Wayback Machine to see if there were any traces of these treasure cards, but to no avail as Wizard101 Central seems to have an airtight lock for their online security. Then I searched up something simple on Google, like treasure card exploits, and lo and behold, the first result that popped up. Someone explained. The Reddit post was made by a user called Sir Doot, dated 1 year ago. It wasn't hard to find, surprisingly, since there was only 1 thread about it on the Wizard101 subreddit. In the Reddit post, the user explained how these cards were created by a certain method which KingsIsle overlooked. The method was by using castle magic. The concept of castle magic was introduced to the game back in late 2016. For those who don't know, players use castle magic to display different types of animation as effects for their homes. At the time, it was still in its early stages of development, which of course might have some glitches or bugs to fix. Anyway, the exploit involved adding a castle magic treasure card into any castle magic item. For the post, he gave an example of a reflector as the castle magic item. If you manually added a castle magic card to the reflector, it would take it from your inventory. But when you take out the card manually, the reflector would give it to you back. They were able to make cards without any source card to work with. The reason why this exploit worked, as he explained, was that the game didn't check if you actually had the card or not. The reflector would just take the card as is. It's almost as if you inserted $1 into a vending machine, it dispenses your snack, but it also gave you back your dollar for some reason. Basically, as if you never used your dollar in the first place. Imagine this type of duplication every time you got hungry for more. It allowed people to create or duplicate rare treasure cards, and even unreleased ones as well. But here was the kicker. What if I told you you could have the power of an actual boss and not have the downgrades as a regular playable one? As the post user stated, normal spells were coded very similarly to treasure card spells. This meant you could duplicate them as well, however these would become ghost treasure cards. The reason for this term is because if you move to another area after the duplication process, these card-generated treasure cards would disappear. The only way to prevent them from disappearing would be to put them into your side deck like any regular treasure card. But because they are coded as normal spell cards, it acts as if it's been a trained spell. This basically meant that any spell that a boss could use, you could essentially use it as well. So why was this a problem? Imagine one-shotting your enemy in 1 turn, or in PvP for that matter, without any recourse. Luckily, only a few select people knew about this exploit and kept it to themselves. So this never actually got into the hands of the wrong people. However, like most glitches, eventually as word spreads from person to person, it becomes more likely for developers to find out and patch the exploit. So what happened to the people that did the exploit? Well, they got banned, of course. But the most important question is what happened to all the cards? Now I could have left it at that, but I really wanted to probe deeper, like a guy who just lost his car keys in a storm drain and has to get it back by reaching into it. Don't worry, some CGI clown isn't gonna bite you. I could almost smell the foul sewer stench of investigative victory now. So I decided to get in contact with the person who made that Reddit post and ask them a couple questions on the subject. They weren't really all that hard to track down. The user simply made a post about moving under a new name, so I messaged them there. Instead of Sir Dude, I'll call him Ben. After a few messages back and forth, I was given the opportunity by him for a conversation over Discord, which I happily accepted since I really wanted to know more. Now I had a ton of questions planned out on this Word document, but as we continued the conversation on Discord, he answered some of my questions I had before I asked them. So in this section, I'll mention only the most interesting questions and answers out of the bunch. The first question I asked Ben was, were there any memorable or unique spells? He answered with quote, the most memorable one was obviously the one I talked about in the Reddit post. The 1 million damage spell called Minotaur. But aside from that, there were a couple others I forgot the name of, but it was something like Ravenwood Flycam, and when casting it, your camera would move around a lot. If I were to guess, this spell was used to record Wizard101 commercial gameplay before they had a proper camera cutscene feature available to use. They probably used an admin command to cast the spell in Ravenwood and record it for an ad. End quote. Anyway, continue with the questions. The next set I asked him involved the Ravenwood Flycam, to which he responded saying he tested it in the massive Fantasy Palace home. Any spell in the game could have been turned into a treasure card but not traded, and that the card picture looked like a fire cat. Next, I asked him, did you happen to discover any unfinished cards using this exploit? He answered no, considering he has been data mining the game for years. Did all the spells in the game have a chance to be trained? To paraphrase, there is a limit to how many you can add, and when we learned a spell, we were just adding it to our deck, so we couldn't just do it all the time. We would have to go out of our way to perform the exploit. The last question I asked them was, would you expect an exploit like this to ever occur in the game again? To paraphrase, the exploit was originally based off castle magic. KingsIsle likes to reuse the spell system for a lot of side activities, which is why this exploit was possible in the first place. I wouldn't be surprised if something similar comes around in the future. KingsIsle is not good at adding new features to the game. There is at least one major exploit like this every year, like for example the Scroll of Fortune and how it allowed people to get any item in it without earning the points. Lastly, I wanted to find out more about the unreleased treasure cards and hopefully got to see a couple of them. So I asked my good friend Sabrina to help out since the Wizard101 wiki had little to no information on them. Through her connections, she was able to dig out quite a few number of cards. While I'm not sure if this was all of the unreleased cards, it's great to see a couple of them survive as part of history. Here you can see Sun Boreas Ifrit, Sun Dragonblade 45-50%, Ice Infected Villager, Death Monster Mash, Moon Blade, Moon Shield, Moon Trap, and Life Yukai. The only one missing mentioned in the Rare Treasure Cards Reddit post was Lamia. But if you want to see what it looks like, it's available to see on YouTube or Google Images, as a regular spell. A huge thanks to Ben for responding, addressing my questions, and taking the time out of his day to talk. I really appreciated it. Also, thank you to my friend Sabrina for helping me find these unreleased treasure cards. Without her, this video would actually take a lot longer to make. Most importantly, thank you guys for watching, and for 7,000 subscribers. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribing is just a click away. Now hopefully I can finally get some sleep. With that, take care and see you guys.